The tragic story of Catherine Howard, Henry VIII teenage queen. Imagine being just 17 years old. Suddenly, you're wearing a crown worth millions. You're living in magnificent palaces. The King of England worships you. You have servants, jewels, and more power than almost any woman in Europe. Then, less than 2 years later, you're kneeling on a scaffold, waiting for an executioner to cut off your head. This isn't fiction. This is the true story of Catherine Howard, the fifth wife of Henry VIII, and one of the saddest stories in English history. But here's the twist. Many historians today don't believe she was the villain history made her out to be. They think she was a child caught in one of the deadliest courts in Europe. So, who is Catherine Howard? Chapter 1. A childhood that shaped everything. Catherine Howard wasn't born into luxury. Although she belonged to the powerful Howard family, her own branch was poor. Her father was deeply in debt. Her mother died when Catherine was still a child. Instead of growing up with loving parents, she was sent to live in the household of the Dowager Duchess of Norfolk. It sounded glamorous, but it wasn't. The Duchess managed dozens of young nobles. Supervision was almost non-existent. Teenagers were left largely on their own. Secret romances, late-night visits, even sexual relationships were surprisingly common. Many historians believe this chaotic environment ultimately sealed Catherine's fate. Chapter 2. Before she became queen. When Catherine was only around 12 years old, her music teacher, Henry Mannix, began making advances toward her. Today, most historians wouldn't call this a romance. They would call it abuse. Soon afterward, she began another relationship, this time with Francis Dereham. Unlike Mannix, Dereham was much closer to Catherine's age. The two became extremely close. They called each other husband and wife. Friends expected them to marry one day. Neither of them realized. Those youthful promises would later become evidence in a treason investigation. Chapter 3. The King falls in love. In 1540, England's most powerful man noticed Catherine, King Henry VIII. But this wasn't the handsome prince people remembered. Henry was nearly 50 years old. He was obese, constantly in pain. His leg ulcers smelled so badly that some ambassadors wrote about them. Meanwhile, Catherine was probably only 17. Young, beautiful, full of energy. Henry became completely enchanted. Within months, he divorced Anne of Cleves and married Catherine Howard. He called her the very jewel of womanhood. It seemed like a fairy tale. It wasn't. Chapter 4. The Dangerous Secret. Being married to Henry VIII came with one terrifying rule. You belonged entirely to the king. But Catherine had a past. And the past doesn't stay buried forever. Soon, a handsome courtier named Thomas Culpeper entered the picture. The two began meeting secretly. Were they lovers? That's one of history's greatest mysteries. Some historians believe they had a full affair. Others argue there's no proof they ever became physically intimate. But one thing is certain. They met in secret. And if Henry discovered that, it could mean death. Chapter 5. The Investigation. Then everything collapsed. A man named John Lascelles informed Archbishop Thomas Cranmer that the Queen had behaved improperly before marriage. Henry couldn't believe it. He thought it was impossible. But investigators started questioning everyone. Former roommates, old servants, childhood friends. One by one, the truth about Catherine's earlier relationships emerged. Then came the biggest mistake of all. Francis Dereham, her former lover, returned to court. His appearance connected every piece of the puzzle. The investigation suddenly became impossible to stop. Chapter 6. Betrayal and Execution. Thomas Culpeper was arrested. Francis Dereham was arrested. Catherine herself was placed under guard. Henry never saw her again. Parliament even passed a law making it treason for a queen to hide previous sexual relationships from the king. A law that effectively guaranteed Catherine's conviction. On February 13, 1542, the teenage queen walked to the scaffold inside the Tower of London. Witnesses described her as calm. She prayed, forgave those around her, then placed her head on the executioner's block. One swing, and it was over. She had been queen for less than 2 years. Chapter 7. Was she really guilty? For centuries, history remembered Catherine Howard as an unfaithful wife, a foolish girl, a promiscuous queen. But modern historians see someone very different. A teenager, raised without protection, possibly exploited by older men, used by ambitious relatives, married to a king more than 30 years older than her. Whether she truly betrayed Henry VIII may never be known, but one thing is beyond doubt. The punishment she received was unimaginably brutal. OUTRO. Today, visitors walking through the Tower of London often stop near the chapel where Catherine Howard is buried. There is no grand monument, no magnificent tomb, just a quiet reminder of a young queen whose life ended almost before it had begun. The question historians still debate isn't simply whether Catherine Howard was guilty. It's whether she ever had a real chance to survive the Tudor court at all. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video, subscribe for more fascinating stories from history, and let me know in the comments. Do you think Catherine Howard was a victim, or did she knowingly risk everything? I'll see you in the next video.